Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Depressed Eeyore, and this is Middara. So I've just cleaned up the board and all of our stuff. Good news is we got through. We finally got a restore and got our experience, and also got this awesome Maw of the Warden. If you kill, I think if you kill the Warden any other way, I don't think you get the shield, but I don't remember. I've never actually killed him by making him fall. And I've never done the thing where I just pickpocket and run because I want the shield. The shield's so good if you're going Courage Stifle, because it essentially ensures that Rook now has a casting die of purple, which I think I'll do that. And another thing is this Courage Stifle passive works for any spell, so it's not just Courage Stifle that uses the shield as the casting die. So if you really want to, you can be kind of like some sort of mage knight type character using a shield for your casting item. All right, I did ask whether From the Grave can revive a loyal Esper, and I mean I was pretty sure you could, but I did get the confirmation. They are treated just like they are treated as allies. So you can revive them, which is kind of cool. Because sometimes you can use it in Elefeed certainly would make a pretty big difference. Not sure if I made any other weird mistakes. I know I corrected one mid battle. I know I forgot to use Bearer of Justice. I should have. If I had applied Wilt, I probably would have been able to end the fight a lot sooner. Because even if the attack itself did no damage, Wilt would have done an extra 2 damage. Because Wilt is amazing. Yeah, all your attacks now do, +2 irreducible. And, the fact that Nightingale didn't really get a good shot in until the very end also kind of hurt me. So I want to go ahead and restore the deck. I'll clear that out. And we got some reading to do, I believe. Yep, so Lead the Way, which is page 66. You sure this is the right way? Nightingale asked for the 10th time, shifting uneasily on her feet. These halls look all the same. Yes. Surrey didn't sound annoyed. No matter how many times Nightingale asked, her tone never changed. Why does it matter if we find the place again, Nightingale? Rook asked. Nightingale opened her mouth to remind him that it wasn't her knight's place to question her motives, but caught herself before she said it. She liked Rook. She had no reason to be so sharp with him. There must be something important on that pedestal. Maybe our first big find. Might as well check it out at this point. Remy walked up beside Nightingale, gesturing non-committally with her wings. We've got to be close. You are. Surrey stopped, pointing at a low doorway. The big room you wanted to find is just through there. And then page 67, Nightmare's Manifest. Well, that sounds pleasant. All right. So, Nightmare's Manifest. Zeke kept his weapon drawn and eyes alert as they crept into the massive room. There was no way anything like Hografar would be sneaking up on them, especially since he was sure the monster wouldn't let them escape a second time. Nightingale sprinted across the huge space, eyes locked on the pedestal. Not even during the mast had she been so laser-focused. There was no sign of Hografar save for a dark stain on the floor, no body either, for which Zeke was grateful. Thief or not, that man didn't deserve to be eviscerated by a giant head. Zeke stopped a few steps away from the pedestal, watching the doorway. Get whatever was here and we'll run, he called, just long enough that he was sure she could hear him. We can figure out what it is once we're gone. I don't understand, Nightingale muttered, her voice suddenly furious. On the pedestal in front of her there was an empty space where something of value had once been. It was just here. We came all this way and... Suddenly Nightingale threw her head back and her whole body began to shake. Her scream came so loud and painful that Zeke retreated in horror. Something black and oozing emerged from Nightingale's wailing mouth, gathering in the air in front of her. Zeke repressed a gag of revulsion as a strange mask grew larger. Nightingale's scream shifted out of the human range, joined by 100 discordant voices from the monster's many mouths. Nightingale stumbled backward, collapsing onto the stone inches from the ledge. She lay there, gasping like a fish, clawing weakly at her throat. Zeke dropped his weapon and stared in horror at the abomination before him. It looked like nothing he had seen before, even worse than Hografar. At least that monster was made of flesh and conformed to geometry he could understand. This creature was neither, its hideous form curving in ways that hurt his eyes just to look at. Mouths and eyes and glittering stars all overlapped on its tar-like body. The outline shifted, eyes melting away to organs he had no names for. It was all he could do not to retch at the sight. Yet it also spoke. It was not like a man, or even like the spirit Suri, with familiar words and strange intonations. Rather, it was as though the monster's voice would make the world shake around it. It spoke with 1,000 discordant sounds, grinding stone and shattering glass, and the last breath of a dying thief. Less than worthless, the abomination called. Are those from your realm so frail that even this simple task was within your grasp? What are you? Zeke asked, his body completely frozen in shock. It turned his rage on him. Slugs contained by numbered dimensions, pretended gods of accidental angelness. I have seen divinity. I obey no false lords. I am Maloma. Boop. Rook charged suddenly past Zeke, bearing down on the monster. Get away from her. Before Rook could attack the Maloma, it grabbed Nightingale around the head and floated down over her. Zeke rushed over to help, with Remy not far behind, but they were too slow. By the time they made it to Nightingale's side, the monster had already forced itself back down her throat. One last flash of shimmering tar, and it was gone. Remy shoved her way past them, lifting Nightingale gently into a sitting position. She's still breathing. They stared, and nobody spoke. Zeke wasn't sure how long they sat there in silence. Eventually, Nightingale started to twitch, opening one eye. Remy let her go, and she didn't fall over. Her voice was painfully weak. Did you guys see that? Yeah. Zeke's voice was low and worried. We saw. Nightingale practically jumped to her feet, staring down at herself in horror. We'll just get Balthazar. He knows about all kinds of monsters. She stumbled away towards the door, panicking now. Let's go. Night. Zeke sounded hesitant, but he put an arm up to slow her retreat. He already left on the memorial hunt, remember? He's gone. What about Kezia or Yol? Rook suggested. My mom's probably gone by now, and Yol's an asshole. I'm not even sure he'd know how to help me. He might even just lock me in a dungeon or something. She swayed a little on her feet. Zeke caught her before she could fall, careful not to step into the path of her tail. Rook frowned. Okay then, Shayless? Nightingale didn't slow down. Her eyes darted about as she spoke. Good idea. If she knows enough to be a teacher at the institute, she's got to know about whatever the hell happened to me. Rook's voice was quiet, urgent. We should get to her as quick as we can. After making all that noise, we might have attracted attention. Hogafar is still down here somewhere. Suri appeared nearby in a faint flash of light. Was there a creature here just now? Something dark. She spun around, her eyes settling on Nightingale. Rook answered. Like a demon made of tar. Do you know about it, Suri? She shook her head. No, but I felt it. It seems almost familiar, an outsider from my realm instead of yours. Nightingale was still for a moment longer, catching her breath. She jerked away from Zeke, heading forward to the open doorway. Let's just see what we can do to get rid of it. With Suri's help, they made good time back to the surface without encountering anything that might devour them. Nightingale seemed to be recovering as they went. By the time they made it back to the surface, she stopped swaying and the color had come back to her skin. Nightingale found her sister alone in one of the upper halls of the castle. Her friends waited downstairs at her request. If she was going to get the information she needed without exposing what she'd done, it would take subtlety that she couldn't manage with everyone else around. Shayless perched atop a banister, tossing a ball against the nearby wall. Her aim was almost perfect. She caught it each time. Good thing, too, considering the fall waiting for her if she leaned too far back. In the center of the massive spiral staircase was a 3-story drop. Hey, sis. Hey, sis. Shayless waved, leaning out a little to catch the ball before it could fall over the edge. Hey, Nightingale waved back awkwardly. What's up? Shayless looked up. Hiding from the new master and commander, Your Highness Yol. Shayless rolled her eyes. I heard you had some fun in the city. Nightingale looked away, afraid that Shayless would see the lie in her face. We've been having a great time, just enjoying our new freedom from the Institute. Shayless went back to bouncing the ball. Don't forget what we taught you. Middara is dangerous. Yeah. Nightingale turned on the pretext of casually looking down at the drop below. So, some people in the city were talking about some kind of monster. Have you ever heard of a Maloma? Shayless stayed focused on the ball, her tone unchanged. Never heard of it. She hopped down, landing on the stairs just behind Nightingale. You sure it wasn't just a rumor? Nightingale turned away, hiding her disappointment. Yeah, probably. Thanks, sis. You're the best. Shayla's watched her as she hurriedly scurried away. Nightingale met with her friends in the great hall, gathered nervously at the end of a massive table. Rook rose as she approached, hands folded. What did Princess Shayla have to say? Not much, unfortunately. She walked to the edge of the table. She didn't actually sit. She was far too nervous to settle down. She'd never heard of a Malama. Did you find anything else from Surrey? Rook shook his head. We tried, but she couldn't stay long. She can only stay in this realm for short periods of time before she is forced to leave. Nightingale sighed, then spoke up. I think I might know somewhere else we can try, but you're not going to like it. Remy and Zeke got to their feet, though it was Rook who spoke first. Hopefully it doesn't involve any more dungeon delving. Nightingale lowered her voice to a whisper, forcing them all to lean in close to listen. My father's study. That drew the reaction that she had been expecting, shock and befuddlement. Rather than let them form their own objections, Nightingale rushed on. If Balthazar were here, he'd let us in, she said. She met Rook's eyes, who looked like he was going to be the first to object. I know you saw it. Whatever the Malama is, it isn't good. Balthazar's study is my only chance of finding the way to get this damn thing out before it gets worse. I heard the king has some incredibly ancient text in his protection. Rook sounded hesitant, but also a little excited. Studying them would be a rare privilege. Remy reached into her bag, drawing out a pouch. She rolled it out on the table in front of him, revealing a set of lock-picking tools. I could probably get us in. 10 minutes later, she did. The study itself was a 2-story affair. With packed shelves filling every spare inch. The lower floor was mostly desk, while the upper floor had a wide stone balcony and shelves on both sides. The group began searching in relative silence, all conscious of the clandestine nature of their visit. Nightingale would take personal responsibility if they got caught, but even so, she doubted Yull would be so lenient. Rook was by far the fastest of the group, scanning whole shelves in seconds and selecting a title or two to add to the growing stack in his arms. Within an hour, he'd figured out Balthazar's filing system, and by nightfall, he'd found the only relevant book in the entire library. Rook cleared his throat, startling Nightingale out of her stupor. She dozed in a teetering mountain of books. She caught the largest stack just as it started to sway, preventing a catastrophic landslide. What is it? I think I found what we need. Rook spoke slowly, hefting the tome in both hands. It was an enormous book, nearly 3 whole feet wide. The pages were frayed at the edge, yellow with age. I wish there were more. Zeke hurried down from the upper balcony. Remy looked up from her reading, her face buried in a smattering of papers on Balthazar's desk. Nightingale thought it a little strange she'd be looking through her father's personal papers for clues, but dismissed her concern in the face of finally getting an answer. Rook flipped the book open to a page he'd been holding with his finger, scanning until he found the section he wanted. The Malama parasite cannot be removed except through the destruction of the host. The creature will then be forced to take the nearest living creature as its new host, or else be banished from the material world. Rook looked up. There's a long list of people here that were infected or suspected to be infected, and how they died. Nightingale barely suppressed a whimper. Her whole world went numb. I'm dead, then. My first real adventure. I get a demon in my head that's going to kill me. She shivered, her voice stretching into strained laughter. I guess Balthazar was right about me being too soft for the demiurge. It seemed strange to think life had been so optimistic only a few days earlier. Nightingale had an ageless life ahead of her, and a future in a prestigious military organization, and friends she trusted. Now all of that was crumbling. Her future could come to a twisted and painful end as a parasite strangled her from the inside. She could be like that mad thief before the end, and there was nothing she could do. Nightingale! Zeke's shout cut through the fog in her head, and she jerked suddenly toward him. What? Tears were brimming in her eyes, threatening to run down her face. She brushed at her eyes with the back of one arm. What is it? Rook cleared his throat. I didn't finish. There's this part here at the end I think you should hear. He held the book up and spoke louder. It is widely known that practitioners of the ancient Theodosian magics employed Malama as familiars. How they could have prevented the creatures from infecting them is not known. Yet the reality of this claim cannot be denied. He trailed off, closing the book. See? Zeke rested one hand gently on Nightingale's shoulder. It's not hopeless. Whoever these Theodosian guys were, they knew how to control them. He looked away. Rook, I bet you already found the book on them, right? We probably don't even have to leave the study. Rook sighed, collapsing into a nearby chair. He creaked and strained under his weight. I did search. Unfortunately, there's nothing here. Nothing I could find anytime soon, anyway. He gestured over his shoulder at the thousands of books. I've heard a little about Theodosian before, though. It's supposed to be powerful stuff, but until today I haven't read anything reputable that even verified it existed. Finding it will take more than breaking into a study. Remy plopped down beside Nightingale. I might know where we can learn more. Remy had a sheaf of papers in one hand. My father isn't the best person on Middara, but he's in the information business. If anyone could find a long-dead school of magic, it's him. Where does he live? Nightingale swallowed hard and tried to regain her composure. This bit of hope, albeit however small, stopped her surmounting fear and sadness, and that was enough to banish the numbness. They'd already conquered impossible odds over the last day or two. Maybe they can do it again. Remy started flipping through the stack of papers. Ramstead. It's a few days' walk from here. Faster if you can fly. Rook set his own large book down. I think it's best we get going. The longer we're here in the study, the more likely Shayless or Yull will catch us. Nightingale looked around as though expecting to see a troop of guards emerging from the balcony. You're right. Humans are all alike. Nightingale froze as words filled her head. So full of hope. You think that getting rid of me will be so easy? She spun around, searching the space around her for the speaker. She saw no one but her friends. The voice wasn't coming from the room. It was coming from inside her head. Is something wrong? Remy asked. Did you hear that? Remy cocked her head to the side. Hear what? Nightingale forced a smile. Yeah, I'm fine. We have a plan. Let's go to Ramstead. Theodosian is a lost art, daughter of Balthazar. There is nowhere for you to flee. Soon your body will be mine. Nightingale ignored the voice, blocking it out with all the willpower she could muster. Rook began cleaning up. Let's go grab our supplies then. Let's go grab our supplies. Then go on the road before Yull or Shayless realize their sister is missing. Reward. Of course, that should probably be in quotes. Nightingale is infected with the Malama and reveals small hidden card UM4, and Nightingale learns the Infection Story discipline. So there's actually, it's not just like fancy items and fancy monsters in this deck. There's also even disciplines. So let's go ahead and get that. The Infection, Assemblage Story. So it has no actual levels, so it doesn't actually apply anything if you happen to have something that scales. Exhaust. Deal yourself 1 irreversible damage to reduce the SP cost of an action or ability you are making by 1. So essentially, if you're like, I'm going to move, you can tap this and take 1 damage to not have to actually spend anything for that movement. Because, move usually costs 1 SP, and you can reduce this by 1. So a lot of times I usually just use it for making my attacks cheaper. But overall, it's a cool ability. Of course, you're damaging yourself in the process, so you got to make sure you don't, accidentally wreck yourself. All right. And then we need to continue to leaving the city of Alinea, page 71. Boop. Leaving the city of Alinea. Nightingale pulled her hood lower as she crept through the city. Her anonymity was somewhat spoiled by her horns, which poked from holes in the top of her hood. Her family wasn't the only one that had been granted horns by the advancement, but they were some of the most publicly known in Alinea. The sooner they were out of the city, the happier she would be. Rook was concealed in a traveling cloak, so much as someone at his size even could be hidden. There's Remy and Zeke just off the road. There's Remy and Zeke just off the road there. Nightingale followed his gaze out the city gates. Zeke was harder to spot, but Remy hadn't even bothered to hide. The white feathers under her wings almost glowed in the rising moon, making her impossible to miss. You think the guards will give us trouble? Let's see. Yeah. Only if they notice you. Most probably served as at least a little time in the castle, so they could recognize you. Just keep your head down and I'll do the talking. Right. Nightingale followed behind Rook, putting him between herself and the guards as best as she could. While it was possible that Yull might forget about her, Nightingale figured that it was just as likely that her parasite would spontaneously get bored of her and leave Middara behind. The city gates were open tonight, as they always were when the city was at peace. Even so, there was very little traffic on the road just now. The constant stream of trade carts and carriages ended when the sun went down, as most sensible traders knew the perils of night travel. A pair of armed soldiers emerged from the guardhouse as they approached, their armor clinked beneath city colors. Both had heavy crossbows, though only one actually carried it readied. "A little late to be leaving the city, isn't it?" asked the female officer. Her voice was suspicious, though heavily laced with boredom. Rook nodded. "Not later than we've traveled before. The forest has no dangers my sister and I can't handle." Nightingale kept her eyes down as Rook recited the lines they had practiced. If Yule wanted to come looking for them, they didn't want to leave an easy trail for him to follow. Indeed. The officer walked around past Rook, looking Nightingale up and down. Nightingale didn't recognize the officer. She had undergone some striking features during her advancement that wouldn't have easily been forgotten. Mercifully, though, the officer didn't seem to recognize her either. "You're both armed, and..." She noticed that the heavy packs they wore, apparently well prepared. "There aren't stolen goods in those packs you're wearing, are there?" Nightingale didn't flinch. While she supposed that technically they had borrowed some of the camping supplies from her father's stockpile, she had no doubt he would have happily allowed her to take them if he'd been there to ask. "No, ma'am," Rook answered, his voice level. "Has there been a problem with theft in the city?" She stared a moment longer into Nightingale's face, then finally turned away. "No, thanks to the vigilance of the constabulary." She lifted a clipboard that had been hanging from her belt, proffering it towards Rook. "I'm going to need you both to sign this. You'll see there's a place for your destination and when you expect to return." "We understand." Rook took the clipboard, scribbling down their lie. He passed it to her, and Nightingale signed with a fake name. The best part of living in a world without Earth's technology was the fact there would be no database to search. The guard took her clipboard, glanced at their responses, and stepped out of the way. "Safe travel," she waved, and the other guard turned to walk away. "Don't get into trouble. The Alinea City Watch doesn't rescue lost tourists." Rook waved respectfully. "We won't." They hurried through the open gate before the guards changed their mind. Zeke and Remy waved at them from beyond the gates. "Looked like you might not make it," Zeke asked. "That lady almost had you, Knight." Rook shrugged. "Either they didn't recognize us, or they aren't looking. I think it's a good thing we didn't wait to leave." Remy turned, saluting the city. See you later, Alinea." Continue to Chapter 2, arriving in Ramstead. So with that, everything is divided by chapter, so I actually need to click this little Chapter 2 button, and I'll load up the Chapter 2 section. I believe all the chapters are just in the same book. You can also see the other half of the map here, which I haven't actually taken much of a look at. Oh, here it is. It even shows the path that we're taking. That's kind of cool. So, Arson Castle, City of Alinea, and we're heading towards Ramstead, which is here, which is a coastal city. And then we got Chapter 2, got an image of that person. Alright, arriving at Ramstead. So what is Ramstead like exactly? Asked, bubbling with new energy after a night's rest. Despite how little experience they all had with Middara and Wilderness, they made it most of the way to Ramstead without incident. Nightingale almost always stayed out in front, even when that meant having to take course corrections from Remy. Remy didn't mind. She walked with her wings out, spread just far enough to catch the breeze constantly blowing off the ocean. It was a nice reminder of the time she spent learning to fly just after arriving on Middara. Remy opened her mouth to answer, but Rook spoke before she could. "One of the smallest cities in the kingdom, according to the maps. Think of a fish market, then picture it a little bigger. That's Ramstead." Remy choked back a laugh. Her friends all turned, staring at her. I think your information might be a little out of date, Rook. Ramstead hasn't been like that since I got to Middara. It's so alive. Ships are always coming in. There's always somebody new to talk to. Way more chaotic than Alinea, but that just means there's more to do." "Well, you know," Rook shrugged. "Your family lives there, right?" "Yeah." Remy turned away, speeding up a little. "I spent my first year on Middara before going off to the Institute. When I arrived, I missed the deadline for the new year and got time to explore the place before being shipped off. I haven't been keeping in touch with my dad as much as I probably should. but I'm happy he'll be happy to see me. But I'm sure he'll be happy to see me. As they reached the edge of a sloping cliff, the city came into view. Ramstead occupied a rocky outcropping of pale granite, jutting out over the ocean. The city had been carved straight from the rock, thousands of little buildings all vying for space overlooking the sea. The city was so thick with structures that Remy could hardly even see the ocean. Wide pavilions and garish cloth-covered switchback walkways between successive levels, all the way down to the docks. Ramstead wasn't walled and gated like Alinea, so they encountered no guardhouses or inspections as they neared. Instead, they found themselves swallowed by sprawling slums of old wooden homes set back from the wealthier stone districts. Nor were the merchants and peddlers restricted to a market district as they were in Alinea. No sooner had they made their way inside than they were accosted with the shouts of peddlers and street performers. Remy found herself smiling as they walked past street vendors hawking fresh fish, pearls, and exotic wares from Midara's distant shores. Whoa, it's like Pike Place. Nightingale beamed. She watched a man toss a fish towards another merchant and clapped. I wish Balthazar would let Alinea be more like this. Come on, we have a long way to walk. Remy pulled at her wrist, and Nightingale let herself get dragged away from all strange street performers and exotic foods. Where's your house? Nightingale glanced down the switchbacks, where it appeared the houses grew more modest the further down one looked. Only the finest, largest mansions were up here, where there was both safety from storms and a perfect view. Remy gestured to one side, to a wide boulevard lined by towering mansions. This way, we're almost there. Thank God. Zeke's voice was low and a little annoyed. You think your father keeps cigarettes? I smoked my last one an hour ago. Rook chuckled. I think you've got a problem. In a few hours, it'll be your problem, too. Zeke smiled as he said, but his expression was deadly serious. The street leading to her home was sparsely populated. What few people they passed were all well-dressed in bright linen and silk. Many had sturdy-looking mercenaries escorting them, an even higher mark of privilege than all the fine clothing. Remy stopped at the finest house on the street. This is the place. The mansion was built in the Moorish style, though the many arches and fine stone had also been built thick enough to prevent easy entry. Even the path leading to the door was elegant, with a bright geometric mosaic and dozens of exotic plants. You live here? Nightingale asked. Don't take this wrong way or anything, Remy, but while the mansion wasn't as grand as Balthazar Castle, it made the Zhang manor that Zeke and Nightingale had been living in look like a studio apartment. Remy started walking again, squaring her shoulders for an uncomfortable reunion. I know I'm not royalty or anything, but my father's an important merchant. He must be a skilled capitalist, Rook said. You got me worried about what you'll think when you see my tiny farm. Though I guess it was a great idea coming here. We'll get night cured in no time. Yeah, Remy stopped in front of the massive oak door. You sure your dad will be okay with all of us staying here? Nightingale asked. We could probably find an inn or something for the night. Come back in the morning? Nah, I'll be fine. What are friends for, right? She knocked several times, striking the door like a gong. Footsteps sounded on the other side, and several heavy bolts rattled as they were unlocked. The door slid open, revealing a tall, thin woman in red and black Moretti colors. Hello, Mia. Long time no see. Remy? A skeptical expression turned to a grin, and she bowed. Your father will be delighted to hear you're back. Mia hardly matched earthly expectations of the ancient family steward. Instead of a face lined with weak wrinkles, she was tall and beautiful, with a short dress assembled from a dozen different interlocking patches of cloth. Remy's shoulders relaxed as her wings slipped into a more comfortable folded position behind her. Maybe this wasn't going to be as hard as she thought. I was hoping to speak with him right away. Is he home? Mia reached up and scratched idly at the precious bun she was wearing. He's in the meeting now. I'm sure he'd be happy to interrupt it and visit with you. That would be wonderful. Mia opened the door and the rest of the way and let them inside. From the outside, only hinted at extravagance. The interior had been furnished without restraint. A wide courtyard of pools and fountains was in the center of the house, each glittering with precious stones. Fine artistic pieces were displayed along the halls on plinths and exotic wood. They walked the length of the house until Mia stopped them beside a security door. Just give me 1 minute. I'm sure your father will be drop whatever he's doing to meet with you. And your her eyes briefly flicked briefly to Nightingale, then back. Friends. She vanished inside the door, snapping it shut behind her. Do your father's servants all dress so? Zeke shrugged. Inviting? Remy cocked an eyebrow. I've never noticed. But yeah, the girls all have the same outfit, and she's not a servant, more of a steward. Never noticed? Oh, wow, okay. Zeke patted at his pocket and then dropped his arms in defeat. I really need a smoke. Not in here, you don't, Remy snapped. How do you think how do you think 1,000-year-old tapestries do with cigarette smoke? Forget it. The door opened seconds later. Mia stepped out, followed by a pair of men so large they had to turn sideways to get their arms through. Remy didn't know them by name, but she could easily recognize her father's mercenaries. She looked back, trying to be reassuring as her friend stared. Remy felt relieved as the mercenaries hurried away down the hall, taking their armor and enchanted crossbows with them. Go on in, Mia nodded respectfully to them. He's waiting. Thank you, Mia. Remy strode past the steward into her father's open study, followed closely by her friends. Compared to the huge windows and flowing light in the rest of the house, her father's study was gloomy. She had to pause for a second to let her eyes adjust. The fire crackled against one wall. The metal shutters covered much of it. Soft carpet muffled their steps, leading the way to a ring of comfortable leather sofas. Her father was waiting in an armchair, arms folded. Annoyance turned to joy as he looked up and met her eyes. Remy, I had no idea you'd return. It was easy to see why there were so many bad rumors about Malik Moretti. Even sitting down, he looked imposing, a solid figure with wickedly curved purple horns and serrated spikes jutting from his armored shoulders. His eyes were red and always faintly glowing. Remy wasn't intimidated anymore, and she only let her excitement show. I just got back. I came straight home. Her father released her after another few moments, only then noticing she wasn't alone. You brought friends. From the Institute, I assume? She nodded. We took the mass together. I never could have passed it without their help. Then on behalf of the Moretti family, you have my gratitude, he said. Malik stared at Zeke and Nightingale. Please sit down. I'll have Mia bring refreshments, and we can talk. A few minutes later, they were all sitting and enjoying glasses of chilled juice. So you graduated then? 2 years of hard work has ended at last. Remy nodded. A few nights ago. That's fantastic. Malik touched her on the shoulder, grinning. I'm sorry I couldn't attend the ceremony in Alinea myself. He looked sidelong at Nightingale, quick enough that Remy almost missed it. I'll have to find you an appropriate gift to commemorate the occasion. I'm grateful, but... She took a deep breath. What I really need is information. See, my friend Nightingale here got into some trouble, and we're looking out for information about Theodosian magic. If you could direct us to someone who can use the magic, that'd be great. But even if all you had were a book or something, that would be helpful too. Malik's expression darkened, and he finally met the prince's eyes. Princess Nightingale Arson. Nightingale seemed confused by Malik's tone. Yes? Did the king send you? He rose suddenly from his chair, stepping between Nightingale and the shelf of ledgers. I assure you, I've obeyed his injunctions in every respect. You'll find a royal inquiry to be an absolute waste of our time. Remy cleared her throat loudly, rising too. Nightingale's my friend. She hasn't come here for any sort of inquiry. I'm sure she knows as little about what you're talking about as I do. Alex seemed to relax. Is that true, Princess? Nightingale grinned widely. The king doesn't tell me shit, Mr. Moretti. We just came here because Remy said you might be able to help. I see. He sat back down and a faint smile cracked his lips. Not very ladylike, are you? I imagine your father wouldn't be pleased with that language. Please excuse me, then. You needed help finding Theodosian magic, was it? Yeah, Remy said. You know a little bit of everything. There's got to be something in the library for that, right? Malik looked thoughtful. I have an informant who might have what you need, but it'll take time. A few days at least. That shouldn't be a problem. Remy turned towards the single small window that faced the central courtyard. Unlike many of the others, this one was made of stained glass, protecting the privacy of those inside while still permitting a little light in. We've got enough rooms for my friends, right? And there's Remy's dad. Number one dad right there. I'm sorry, but that won't be possible. He looked past her, again directly at Nightingale. You've been here too long already. If news that a Princess Alinea slept under my roof ever reached Balthazar, it would be trouble for all of us. He despises me more than any of you know. He would see this as a violation of our understanding. He turned the other way towards where Zeke slouched in another of the comfortable armchairs. Here's Zeke Zhang, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure your cousin would be happy to accommodate you while you're in the city. Grace? Zeke said with a start. We'll see. They rose, leaving half-eaten snacks where they'd been sitting. Remy glared back at her father in frustration. At least send us a letter or whatever when you figure out something about Theodosian. Malak caught her hand before she could follow the others out of the room. A moment, Remy. In private? Even with her frustration, she didn't argue. Their conversation didn't last long, and soon she was free to rejoin the others. Page 77, finding an end. Your father looks like a supervillain, Zeke said, and they were back on the streets of Ramstead, far enough that they probably wouldn't be overheard. I mean, I'm not saying he's a villain. I'm just saying that the advancement dealt him a perfect hand. I got my wings and innocent looks from my mom, Remy said, flopping them exaggeratedly. Zeke pushed them aside as best as he could, annoyed. I really need a smoke. Sorry we couldn't stay at my place, Remy muttered. Nightingale wrapped a comforting arm around her shoulder for a moment. Your father has a nice place, but we'd probably have been cooped up in there until he got the information we needed. Probably this way we can spend a few days enjoying the city first. They had to ask for directions to Grace's manor a few times, but it didn't matter. Nightingale enjoyed talking to so many different people. The advancement didn't always cause noticeable changes, but it was fascinating to see different ways people changed when it did. She spoke to a man with skin like a chameleon, a girl with dragonfly wings, and saw others who were even stranger. After a few blocks, Nightingale stopped, noticing Zeke had fallen out of step. She hurried over, watching as he exchanged a few coins with a street vendor, accepting a pack of cigarettes. He grinned as he pulled one out of the pack, stuffing the rest away. Sorry, I was already getting a headache. I think you're ready to get rid of those? Think you're ready to quit those yet? He shrugged as he lit it. Nah. Nightingale sniffed at the burning tobacco in the air and grimaced. I wish you'd smoke something that smelled good at least. We need to get you a vape. Remy interrupted before he could reply, hurrying over to them. Zeke, is your cousin cool? Isn't she the governor or something? He drew a long drag from the cigarette, sighing with relief. I heard that she's supposed to be a lot like her father Jan, but I guess she had beef with Balthazar or Kezia or someone. I don't really know the specifics. She was assigned here before I came to Middara, so I didn't see her much. It was already getting late, and the setting sun was turning the ocean a shimmering orange color behind them. The activity in the streets wasn't nearly what it had been when they first arrived. Listen, guys, I don't think we should stay with Zeke's cousin, Nightingale began. Why not? Rook asked, resting one hand on his holstered weapon. He seemed to be watching the crowds passing around them, though Nightingale couldn't have said why. If we stay there, then two things are going to happen. It makes this visit official. My brother will find out we're here faster than he would have already. Second, if she's like any other politician, she'll want to use our visit somehow. Zeke nodded. Probably. What's plan B? Nightingale didn't have far to look. Sorry, adjusting mic here. Didn't have far to look, since seeing the sign had been what inspired the thought in the first place. Patrick's Dragon Arms was painted there, along with a crude revolver crafted from scrap metal. How about instead of making ourselves a royal visit, we act like regular people and use an inn? Rook squinted at the sign. Beds, tats, grog, and guns. At least we don't have to go very far if we need anything. I'm in, Zeke said. Sounds like they're having fun in there. Remy leaned in, and Nightingale paused to listen. Off-color song drifted out the open window, as loud as it was crash. The interior was everything Nightingale had hoped for. Almost every table was packed with happy, tipsy people. Cards and gambling filled most of the room, while another, slightly cleaner, corner of the room was busy with a tattoo artist hard at work on a reclining guest. On one end of the room there was a sturdy wooden counter with weapons of various kinds hanging just behind it. A barmaid with dark skin made her way through the crowd with a tray of drinks, dodging between patrons with poise as she deposited their orders. A muscular man reclined on a crate by the counter, tinkering with a fine flintlock pistol. He also wore intricate glasses and one of the fullest russet beards Nightingale had ever seen. "Hey," Nightingale called. He jerked, nearly falling off the crate. "What the hell?" Nightingale lowered her voice, kicking at the floor. We're looking for the proprietor. Is Patrick here?" He nodded. "That's me." He paused, sizing her up and down. "Board or booze?" "Both. 2 rooms and enough drinks to help us relax." "Sure thing. I think we've got a few vacancies left." It was hard to be sure, but was that suspicion on his face? "It's 2 gold pieces a night, take it or leave it." Nightingale had no idea if it was a lot of gold for a room, but Patrick made it sound like she was getting screwed. She was about to bring it up when Remy popped in next to her. "I'll get it." Remy leaned over and dropped a small handful of coins into Patrick's hand. Nightingale gave her a look. "Where did that come from?" "Daddy gave me some spending money before we left," Remy said, smiling. See, she searched for an open space for them all, but could only find a few seats at the bar. "If we're going to be proper adventurers, we should at least have a few drinks." "I'll pass." Zeke took one of the keys from Remy, shouldering his pack toward the stairs. "I've had enough adventuring for one day. Thanks. Give Rook mine. He probably won't even notice." And there's Patrick. So it's an inn, weapon shop, bar, and apparently a tattoo parlor. Quite the combination. Alright, continued. "Thanks," Rook said, exasperated. "Let's get the only guy that seems to be paying attention to our surroundings drunk. Although, it might be nice to take the edge off." Nightingale glanced at Zeke's retreating back, but didn't try to argue. Instead, she turned to the others. "You guys want to have a drinking contest?" Halfway through Nightingale's first ale, she was asleep. Remy watched with more than a little amusement. She's a real lightweight, huh?" Remy perched beside Rook on one of the rickety bar stools. After an hour or so, the tavern began to empty. Its patrons headed up to their beds or out to later venues. "It's not just her," Rook said, his speech only slightly slurred. "Exhaustion doesn't mix with alcohol." He glanced once around the inn at mostly empty tables. "I think I'm done." He rose, swaying for a moment. "I think I'll take Night up, too. You think you'll be all right down here?" "Yeah." Remy pulled her latest mug closer to her, glaring defiantly at its contents. "I think I'll have one more and go to bed." "All right." Rook gently shook Nightingale awake, and the two made their way upstairs. Time passed. Remy wasn't really sure how much. She exchanged her empty mug for a full one and watched the bar empty around her. Eventually, the hearth burned down and all the other tables were empty. She sat alone at the bar with a mug she hadn't touched in at least an hour. "You look troubled." It was the inn's proprietor, Patrick, with a mug of his own. He took the seat beside her unceremoniously. "You can say that." Remy had run out of restraint 2 or 3 drinks back. "I didn't think I'd be sleeping in an inn tonight." "Why's that?" Patrick asked as he took another swig. "My dad. I know he's not the nicest, but he's always been good to me. It's the first time I've seen him in 2 years, and he won't even give my friends a place to stay." Patrick nodded with the knowing confidence of a bartender. "Probably has something to do with your friend there. Never heard of a Moretti anywhere near an arson unless they were locked in irons." Remy looked up, but the man's colored glasses were starting to blur into the wall behind him. You know me?" She shifted uneasily in her seat. "Malik might not officially own Ramstead, but he owns Ramstead." He raised his glass towards the nearby window with his mug, then took another long sip. "You sure it's cool to spend time with the princess? I doubt your parents are any happier than hers about the whole thing." "Nah, it's cool." Remy got to her feet, swaying slightly. "We graduated together in institute. Balthazar was at the graduation even." Remy set her mug down, and not even noticing that she sloshed a portion of it onto the floor. I think I should sleep. Long day tomorrow." "Don't puke, or I'll make you clean it up." Yeah. Remy threw her hand as if she was knocking his words out of the air. "You couldn't make me clean it up. My dad owns the city, remember? He'd send goons after you." She lifted her finger in the shape of a gun. "Pew pew." Remy stumbled away, making her way upstairs. Patrick watched her leave, his frown deepening. We already knew that Remy has a background of, supposedly being the daughter of a mafioso and things like that. And it's quite clear that there's much of that in Middara as well. Alright, commotion downstairs. And you can see there's a flag check. Despite the way he acted, Rook was neither drunk nor particularly tired. The advancement had granted him incredible fortitude. So when he heard the sound of breaking glass and shouting through the floor, he was up almost instantly. He hefted his weapon, then kicked Zeke's cot with one foot. Zeke woke on the third kick, shoving violently at the empty air. He looked as though he were about to shout at Rook for waking him until he heard the screaming. Rook couldn't make out the words, though the hostility was plain enough. They snuck out into the hall, surprisingly quiet despite his size. Nightingale was already waiting there, crouching by the stairs with a weapon in her hand. Once they were out and onto the landing, voices from downstairs carried clearly. "Damn it, Patrick! I thought you cared about this city." Rook didn't recognize her voice, though her fury was impossible to miss. Nightingale feigned a tactical hand maneuver that made no sense to Rook, then crawled closer to the stairs. Rook simply nodded and followed her, with Zeke behind. "I do, Aisling. Why do you think I've been helping you all this time? You never would have learned where that damn artifact was if it hadn't. Then why are you bailing out on me?" The girl responded, something smashed with a sound of splintering wood. "You think I'm safer doing this on my own?" By then, Rook had made it far enough down the stairs that he could glance over the banister. Patrick had his back to the bar, surrounded by debris. Broken bottles, a shattered chair, and an ocean of playing cards covered the floor. The woman facing Patrick was nearly as tall as Patrick himself, with long pigtails and clothes of tight white fabric, which was pretty much that picture we had at the beginning of the chapter. She had a bandage over one eye, and the other was wild with frenzied emotion. "Aisling, listen." Patrick had his hand in front of him defensively and wasn't reaching for a weapon. "There's a better way, but if we resort to the same techniques..." A board squeaked under Nightingale's feet, and she swore under her breath. Aisling's head snapped around, glaring straight up the stairs at them. "Who the hell are you?" "You know what? I don't care." She kicked the nearest table leg so sharply that it splintered, sending the table crashing down in front of her. "Forget it, Patrick. You've obviously got your hands full with the inn or whatever. If you ever grow a goddamn backbone, you know where to find me." "Aisling, wait." Patrick called after her. She ignored him, vanishing out the door and into the morning fog. They made their way down onto the ground floor, a mixture of shame and curiosity on their faces. Instead of screaming at them, Patrick got a broom from behind the counter and started sweeping up broken glass. "Hey, so, you guys hear all that?" "Yeah," Nightingale said, now fully awake. "Pretty much." Patrick leaned back on the counter, sighing deeply. Look, you guys keep your mouths shut, and you can stay tomorrow for free." "Keep our mouths shut about what?" Remy's voice came from the stairs, sounding strange. She stumbled out, hands rubbing gently at her temples. She didn't actually wait for an answer. "Anybody got an aspirin?" "I've got black coffee." Patrick ran one hand through his beard, glancing behind the counter and into the kitchen. "Well, I had black coffee. I could put another pot on, though. Just let me get this mess cleaned up before anyone wakes up." Nightingale reached out, touching Patrick's arm. "We won't tell anyone." "Good." He relaxed visibly, picking up the broom again. "Thanks." After a few moments, Zeke approached, waving a piece of paper in the air. "No way," he said with a dumbfounded look. "Check this out." The piece of paper in his hand contained a picture of a grotesque-looking animate. Nightingale snatched it out of his hand. "Ha! We've seen this guy before. We actually fought him. Hey, is this a reward poster? Does this mean we get a reward if we kill him?" Patrick snatched it out of her hand and looked. "You guys killed a warden?" "Flag check. Does the party have the story flag? Bouncer bounced. We should, unless I forgot to check it." "Yes. So, defeating the warden is what got us the bouncer bounce. So, yes." Patrick looked impressed. If the party could kill such a horrible monster, they must be more experienced than he thought. Each party member gains one experience. Unfortunately, the one who posted the reward was killed months ago. There's probably no chance for a reward. And then we continue to story round Ramstead Exploration, page 81. So we all get one experience. Boop, 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 and boop. Oh, and let me update the total. So at this point, Remy, Nightingale, and Rook are one experience away from getting a tier 3 discipline. Zeke technically has enough experience for a tier 3, but he doesn't have a tier 2 yet, so he can't get it. But he does have enough for a tier 2 if he wants to pick up something. Alright, so page 81. Alright, tip. New loot levels and variant tags. Starting in this story round, adventurers have access to common items. In the following encounters, the loot level will also now be common. Combatants with a variant tag have special spawning rules listed on the back of their cards. Usually these special spawning rules are associated with the current loot level. You may spend gold and learn disciplines with XP. In addition, you may trade any gear amongst your party members and party stash. The store contains the following items for sale, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we already know about all that. But yeah, now we have common items available. We still have access to mundane if you do want to buy a mundane item. Also, all, let's see. Yeah, it's mentioning it there. All previous tiers are available. Unique items, unfortunately, the only thing I'm going to get is one common item available. We won't have access to any of the uncommons yet. We do have one side quest, which is Malik's mission. Also, we can technically do a 2-skull bounty. There is a 2-skull bounty, but I'm not going to do it until I've done the first encounter of the bounty. The bounty is super hard. It's pretty difficult, at least at how it starts. But I can tell you right now, one of the loots, one of the loot tokens gives you the reward for it is an uncommon consumable, or potentially an uncommon consumable, which I don't have access to yet. So I'm going to wait until that becomes available before I attempt that bounty again. But I've done Malik's mission before, so we'll be doing that one. That one's pretty much what you do, so you can get access to your third tier disciplines and all that good stuff. And then of course there's the story moving onward. Now something about the variant tag, I haven't really been messing with the variant tag ever. Yeah, I mean I don't think I've ever encountered anything that mentioned a variant tag. I mean, I could have missed it. I mean, the game was reasonably hard even without it, but I don't know. Well, I'll try to keep an eye out, because usually I just let the load page handle everything, but I should probably look at the setup and make sure it's specifically the type of monsters I'm looking for. All right, so with all that, we can finally spend money. So common items are very expensive, to say the least. We're looking at 40 to 60 gold per weapon. There's definitely a number of things we want to get access to. I'm just going to go ahead and, there's tons of items we can go through. A lot of them are pretty good. Some good ones to get, if you have an archer, is Barbed Arrows. Barbed Arrows are essentially, you can only have, if you're using a quiver, you can only have 2 arrows equipped at the same time, so we'll be losing the extra range and the ability to counter dodge from True Flight arrows in exchange for something else. Barbed Arrows is, if you ever fight anything that has 0 armor, you gain plus 3 physical damage, and since you can equip 2 of the same arrow, as long as you have a quiver, that's essentially 6 extra damage against anything that has no armor. So Gavaden, you'll just, if you hit, you do a initial 6 damage. Same thing for cave sickles and things like that. But things like earth loas and stuff like that doesn't work as well. It's great for water loas as well because it's just raw damage. It's not affected by symbols. So pretty good stuff. So we want 2 of these. For our summoner, for Remy here, Markings of Strength. All it does is plus 4 health. And health, the more health Remy has, the more health her summons have. So we definitely want those. Everything else is pretty good, but not game breaking. Rink of Blood is actually pretty useful because every time you do damage, pretty much once per turn, when you do damage, you can just heal too. So pretty good stuff there. So I don't really need any new accessories per se. Let's actually, I'm gonna hit shuffle once and we'll reveal our unique item. So whatever this thing is. All right, so Scimitar Swallow. It's an exotic weapon. It's a swallow type weapon. It's 2 teal dice for its damage. It's 2-handed. You can exhaust after resolving an attack you made to make another attack against a different target. Every 2 shields is plus 2 damage. Every star is plus 2 damage as well. And then you can spend 1 stamina point after you defeat an opponent with an attack. You may move 3 spaces, and if you end up adjacent to another opponent after this movement, you attack again. So this thing is about just kind of blitzing attacks against multiple opponents type thing. Essentially, you're just spinning the blade a bunch, like Lubu style. So pretty good stuff there. Another key thing we definitely need to get is the next tier of cores, mainly because of it's +2 defense instead of +1, and every point of defense is super important so you don't get hit. And also, even if you do get hit, it technically reduces the damage by 1, so that's pretty good too. Armor wise, there's a few things we want from that as well. So I want this Perpetrator's cat suit, mainly because it's +8 health, so that's going to be probably a Remy thing. Eventually, I kind of want the Barbed Breastplate. I might actually want that now. In my personal playthrough, I didn't actually grab it because I had a upgrade on the Cuirass already. But since I don't have an upgrade on the Cuirass, the Barbed Breastplate, it functions pretty much the same as the Cuirass, except it has 2 extra health, and you can exhaust whenever you get hit with an attack by an adjacent opponent to just do 3 damage to them, which is pretty good. So pretty good stuff there. And then of course there's some upgrades of the cloth armors. The cloth armors, besides more health, is they get access to reducing damage from ranged attacks. The leather acts very much the same except more health, and you can actually flip it to make it so you can't be targeted for a turn, which is really, really powerful. So pretty good stuff there. Anyway, so weapon-wise, I don't really need a new bow. There is a new bow in here that's pretty decent, but I like Bear of Justice. I like that +6 physical damage that you can get with shields. But if you go Assassin's Longbow, its special abilities, you can get extra defense when you're in hindering terrain, and it's a orange and a teal die. So it is more accurate and a little bit stronger, but I like the benefits of Bearers of Justice and the utility. So with all that said, you also get access to your first set of guns. Flintlocks, and I think there might be a shotgun somewhere in here. It looks like it's just Flintlocks, which is a one-handed ranged weapon, and when you fire it, you flip it, and the only way, and then you get a free re-equip after you fire it. And whenever you determine the damage of the attack, you add a purple physical on top of what you're doing. And if the paired weapon doesn't have finesse teal, gain finesse teal. So what you can do with this is if you have 2 Flintlocks, since both of them don't have finesse, they get finesse teal, and so you'll be doing teal damage as a 4 range attack. And then the flip side is actually it becomes a melee weapon until you reload it. You have to spend a stamina point to unflip the card. So it's pretty useful. Essentially, you can pistol whip with it. There's definitely some interesting combos you can do with it. There's also this really unique great hammer called the Looty Booty Pounder, which if you look at the books, if you have 4 books symbols, you get +1 gold. So it's just a bunch of money from it. You can also push and inflict paralysis, much like most hammers. So not too bad. Some casting rods. Yeah, there's kind of a good variety. We don't need any new shields because we have the Maul of the Warden, so we're good on that front. But weapon-wise, we want some straight shivs for Zeke. Not only is it a weapon upgrade, but it's another weapon that can be thrown, and it actually does orange damage for its throw. And since he has an Adventurers pack, the plan is I'm going to have hand axes and shivs, and I'll throw the hand axes and then switch to the shivs. So that's the plan for that. And then we don't want anything for Nightingale. I do eventually want a better weapon, hammer for Rook, but I don't need it immediately. The next tier of hammer, that's a hand axe, is the Captain's Hammer, which is anytime you defeat an opponent, another ally with an SOI gets courage. Also, it gives additional damage for every star, so not too shabby. Anyway. So for Remy, we want a Scythe. Scythe is pretty much the summoner weapon. Like hands down, it is a summoner weapon. Mainly because it has a decent physical attack, and it has a casting upgrade. It's not as good as like a staff casting upgrade at this point, which would be teal, but it does provide an orange, and that's a lot better than the purple we have right now. Also, anytime that you cast spells, it automatically empowers. You also get, it has reach 2 and it has provoke. You can make it so it has provoke 2. Provoke 2 makes it so you can do break attacks or opportunity attacks at 2 range instead of at 1. It also, if you look at symbols, one pair of symbols will actually give +2 physical damage, while stars will give magic damage. So like very much, it's a mixed weapon, which is really kind of neat. So that's the plan. So with this, it'll bolster my summons attack because the summons use the same attack dice, including the empower die, so they will always be empowered. And they'll get an orange casting die, so it won't be like what I am right now, where I have some physical attack but no casting. I'll have a little bit of both now. Bad news is it costs 60 gold, so a lot to work through here. All right, so we have 477 gold available to us. Let's see what we can play around with. So that's the arrows is 70 gold, and that's another 80. So that's so all of this, getting all that together, that's 150 gold right there. And yes, I want all of it. So 150 gold, that's going to bring us down to 327. Done. All right. We want the Scythe, period. That's non-negotiable. We also want the Perpetrator catsuit. So that's 60 and 50, so that's 110 gold. So that'll bring us to 217. All right, next is the shivs, 40 and 40, so another 80. So we're at 137 gold left. As you can see, this drops very quickly. Also, the other reason why I want to keep the Bearer of Justice is because of the weapon upgrades I already have on it. Putting upgrades on a common weapon costs more gold than it does when you put it on a mundane. So something to keep in mind. All right, so we have 137 gold. We are really low on items at the moment, but I'm hoping to make up for it with a few tricks. But let's go ahead and get that done. So main things we want a gene tweak. That's 50 gold. That's going to go to Remy. The defense will buff up the summon, and also has an additional ability where you can, instead of exhausting for dodging, you can exhaust for a 1 in 6 chance to reduce physical damage to 0, which can be useful. I do like the exquisite pendant, which I might go ahead and consider grabbing because it has I don't really have very many ways of removing effects that once they're on me. There's a ghost canister, which is essentially the same as a utility core, but you can also exhaust it when an ally with an SOI provokes a break attack. They may dodge, so that's kind of neat. Also, something to note: whenever you flip these utility cores, they will give you a random consumable of the current loot level and lower. So that does include the common cards. So we now have access to those. So we definitely want a ghost canister. It's going to probably go to Zeke. Nightingale, I think I want to actually have an exquisite pendant if possible. I think that's going to be the main thing. So we at least have a way of removing effects if we need to. Also, I'll give her a conviction die. That's actually, kind of decent. I don't really need her to have a lot of HP, to be honest. So yeah, we'll do that. Of course, this is going to eat up pretty much all of our money, as you could probably guess. 50, 50, 55, so that's 155 gold, which is more than I have right now. So let's put that to the side for right now. 50 and 50, that's 100, so we're at 37 gold. Alright, so let's go ahead and replace that and that. We don't need the curse anymore. In fact, the curse I'm going to pass on to Zeke. That'll give him another means to reduce damage. So we'll go ahead and put this on the pile there. That there. This will be all stuff we'll probably end up selling. I'm not going to sell these arrows. I'm going to hold on to them, but I am going to equip these ones for now. The axe with the scythe. You get the cat suit, so we're good on that front. I'm going to drop the fight drive and take a markings of strength and drop an earrings for our markings of strength. And we'll give enchanted piercings to Rook and fight drive to Nightingale. And the fortune cookie I'm going to go ahead and give to Zeke. Okay. And then I'm not selling the hand axes. Instead, I'm going to put these straight shivs in the backpack. And then we're going to go ahead and swap out, and we're actually going to give him the utility core, but it's going to be in his pack. Anytime he gets an item, he can get a free re-equipped. So what I can do is I can use the utility core and swap over to the next utility item and go from there. Alright, so this thing's what, 55 gold? So if we go to Party Stash, can't sell consumables, but we sure as hell can sell everything else that's in here. You don't need to worry about picking these up anymore, so. Alright, so we have 2 unique items and some commons. So the common items, sorry, not the common, the mundane non-unique items are 5 gold each. So there's 4 there, so that's 20 gold. That'll put us at 57. And we'll just pile these on top of each other for now. And I can just sort them later. I'll just put them there for now. Alright, so that's 57 gold. I'm going to use it all and have 2 gold left to get the exquisite pendant. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass the utility core that she had over to Zeke as well. So a pack size is usually 3, and then the adventurer's pack increases by 6. So you'll have 9 things in there. So that's why I'm willing to spare it. And then she can have this, and I'll switch her to teal dice there. Alright. Alright, that kind of works. And what's kind of nice is you can use these things at any time, so you can actually use it outside your turn. So literally at the start of the battle, I could just flip all the stuff I need. Alright, with all that said and done, Heart Box and Wand of Hindsight. I'm going to go ahead and put the arrows in the stash. I think that's going to be everything for right now. I know I still need to get an accessory for Rook, but I'm probably just going to wait until we either get one of the unique ones or get a drop maybe. We'll see. But anyway, just to kind of show what my upgrade did. So Remy has a base health of 12. Well, let's start with her defense. Her defense is +2 now, so she gets 11 defense. Her armor's now 1. And then 12 health, plus 8 from Catsuit brings it to 20. Gene Tweak brings it to 22. Animism brings it up to 26. Markings of Strength brings it to 30. Markings of Strength brings it up to 34. So now she has 34 health, and that includes, and her summon will have 34 health. Very, very useful. Her casting die is now orange. She only has 1 conviction now. So pretty standard stuff there. Nothing really to note here. Actually, there is a few things to note here. His health is dropped. He now only has 14 health, which is not a lot. But he has 2 armor now. Everything else is fine. Nightingale's stuff is still pretty much the same, just her conviction changed. And then Rook here, pretty standard. Yeah, oh, actually, he has 2 white convictions now. Oh, also, we have this medium shield. I'm going to hold on to it for now. And since I don't really need any more money at the immediate moment, I'm just going to go ahead and put these away for now. The only thing I have remaining, I know this video is going on long, is I want to go ahead and get a new skill for Zeke. He's got Mend, he's got Banished Knowledge. At this point, I am going to go ahead and pick up Magic Armor. Because eventually I'm going to get access to tier 3 summons, and they don't have barrier available. So there you go, Magic Armor. And that's going to cost, since we have 2 level 1s already, it's going to add 2 to the cost, so it's going to cost him 5. Bringing him down to 2. But now he can do haste, and he can heal, haste, and do barrier now. So that'll hopefully be pretty good. And that's pretty much it. We got a side quest, Malik's mission, which we'll do next time. They'll probably be taking a little bit of a break since I've recorded so much. Also, apparently there was this exit token that just kind of was laying here, so I'll just clear that. Alright, and yeah, I think that's going to be everything for right now. I might look off screen to see if there's anything else I want to tinker with, but for right now, I am the Depressed Hero, and this has been Dara. See you guys later.